Folks, thanks so much for tuning in again today. And yes, you are correct. We're getting some comments from listeners and viewers actually around the world in terms of where were you yesterday? Well, we had events in Vancouver, Canada, British Columbia, and a number of things that were taking place sort of early morning and meetings well into the morning. And we missed it yesterday, catching up today. Thanks for tuning in. And you're going to want to hear today the good, the bad, and the ugly, we're going to call it, some things on the sort of violence trend through society, but switching up, we're going to look at some examples of how consumers really made radical changes in big companies like Meta. And stay tuned in before you go, because you're going to hear about what coffees won in the international judging competitions, and see if you're getting the right kind of caffeine kick in the morning. You've been hearing, American friends and in Canada, the death of the well-known Senator Lindsey Graham in the U.S., a lot on the news there, quite tragic. He was only 71 years old. That's pretty young from my point of view. And here's the thing. It's been reported a lot. I'm not going to go into that a lot, other than to say it's very disturbing to see the ongoing, and I think it's an increasing trend in media, of people celebrating, and it's almost, as I say, a ghoulish kind of thing, celebrating the death of their adversaries, and this is in the public square. Of course, online, and for those of you who are still stuck doom scrolling for hours, and I'd suggest you try and get away from that because it's pretty depressing out there in those universes. But even commentators, political commentators on mainstream media, saying things like, reporting on the death of Lindsey Graham, saying things like good riddance and what he's doing in hell now. And it's one thing to see it, and as bad as it is generally on the internet and on TikTok and on X and other things, we saw the same thing with the death of Charlie Kirk. We've commented on that. Now, that was obviously that happened some time ago, but it's become, memes have taken over, and laughing and mocking about death and the killing of public officials. Not a good situation. It spreads into the sporting world. We see with the FIFA games, the World Cup, the soccer or football, whichever you want to call it, after the London-Morocco match, the violence in the streets, so many of the games where people are bringing the politics into it. They're showing the Palestinian flags, they're trashing Israel and anti-Semitic chants that are going on. Not a good thing. Also in the sporting world, I don't know if you follow the WNBA. It's quite a remarkable league, the women's NBA, and Caitlin Clark, of course, has been a huge figure in women's basketball, not just in the WNBA as she is now, but even through her college years. Just a phenomenal player, a crushing force out there. And ongoing, you've probably watched this. If you haven't been watching the WNBA, you've probably seen it's breaking into the mainstream news, not just the sporting news, but the amount of vitriol, the amount of attack and abuse she gets. And I'm just reporting what's out there from black players. And she herself stays right out of any kind of political commentary. She stays away from that. And then she gets asked by the sports writers, do you think this is racist? It seems to be the black players, the women players are being especially violent towards her in the game. She stays right out of that generally, doesn't get it. She just says, look, I'm just playing the game. But in that particular league, there's also, you may have heard of Paige Buecker. Now, Paige is a white player and also phenomenal player. She got sidelined last year with a torn ACL. But she really goes after Caitlin Clark too. Paige is much more political, makes a lot of statements on the political side. She chooses a different path, not sure why. And she and her partner, she's partnered with another female player, really go after Caitlin Clark a lot. You're seeing it with sportscasters. We talked about this a week and a half ago in the men's basketball. The very famous and well-known black sports commentator, he's on ESPN. Actually, I like listening to the guy. He's got good commentary, but upset that some teams are playing their white players quite a bit, and those white players that are talking about, as we looked at this last week, are actually leading scorers in the whole league. So again, we see it on the sporting field, this kind of anger and violence that's coming up. The two of the Supreme Court justices in the U.S., that's Justice Amy Coney Barrett and also Justice Elena Kagan, they actually have made a rare appearance on Capitol Hill, appearing before Congress, asking for more money for security for Supreme Court justices because of the amount of the death threats that have gone up. $20 million they're asking for, $2 million of that to be just on the increased security on the homes of Supreme Court justices in Toronto over the weekend. What normally or should be these, the summer festivals that take place, the Salsa Festival, bringing much of the, Caribbean food and music, and should be happy times. They've been getting increasingly violent, and 2 people shot dead, 7 people shot overall, 2 killed in Toronto in that particular festival. Ongoing, the anger is increasing out there on the political side and on the civil side. We've been talking a lot about the Democrat Socialist Party that's within the Democrat Party, Democrat Socialists of America, also pushing the Democrat Party strongly to the left. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, AOC, who is seen to be a contender. She's very, very left-wing in all of her politics. And within the Democrat Party, that the Democrat Socialists of America, that's the socialists within the Democrat Party, angry at her, saying she's just not going hard enough to the left. They don't want her running for the Democrat ticket for president. They say she's not going to be radical enough. These are concerning trends, this willingness and ability and acceptance of people with violent expressions, anger increasing, not a good thing at all. Can I just throw in something that's interesting here on top of that? And I'm not saying this is part of the problem, but kind of a surprise announcement in Canada where just in the last 2 days, a former member of parliament, and actually I know this gentleman, his name is Inky Mark, interesting name, but that's his name, Inky Mark, from Manitoba, lives near the Dauphin region, just been arrested. Now, he was a member of parliament for a number of years. He joined the Canadian Alliance when I was leader. He shifted from the Reform Party, and then he shifted out again in anger himself. Not happy enough with what was going on with the Canadian Alliance in those days as it merged in then with the Conservative Party. But he was just arrested on charges of trafficking in illegal firearms, $300,000 found in his home, all kinds of firearms and weapons. I don't know if you know Inky Mark or followed him back in the day, but kind of a mild-mannered guy. And a lot of these stories just coming up, and it is a bit concerning in terms of the anger that is rising. Well, in my constituency, former constituency, and where my wife and I live most of the time in Kelowna, in central British Columbia, there's a group there called Action for Canada. This is basically a family support group, Action for Canada. They're being sued by a person who is an education assistant in Kelowna, but also is a member of the drag community in Kelowna. And he's taking the Action for Canada people to court because on their website, they just published things from his website. And they are upset about the fact that on his website, there's a lot, of course, he talks about he's not just an education assistant, but in his other life, which he's quite public about, he does a lot of these drag performances. And on that site, on the same site where he's talking about education issues and where there's items that he talks about that are available to kids, he's promoting in his drag story time that he does at the library and in other places with kids. So the Action for Canada people are saying the taxpayers of Kelowna, because some of the activity that goes on is taxpayer funded, some of the stuff with the drag queen story time and others, and they're saying the Action for Canada people aren't saying he should be barred or he should be, charged. They're just saying taxpayer funding should not go to those activities, and so he is suing them. So the drag queen guy and promoting his website, I don't even want to talk about and name some of the things he promotes on his website, but it's kind of scary, kind of horrifying, and we're going to see where all of that goes. It's interesting. His name when he was identifying as male was Tyson Cook, and his new name over the last few years, first name is Frida, last name is Wales. Say that quickly, and I have to admit I kind of smiled when I got it. It took me saying his name 2 or 3 times. Frida Wales, Frida Wales, Frida Wales. Hello, Frida Wales. Okay, anyway. But the Action for Canada group now has about 20,000 signatures. This is in the Kelowna area, just to ask that the city not be involved in any of their taxes going to promoting that activity. So you're seeing this, the ongoing conflict. I call it a cultural conflict. Some might call it a spiritual conflict. There's a group called the First Liberty Institute in Connecticut, and it's just been ruled against them in July of all times. But as they are approaching and planning for the Christmas season, that the nativity scene will be banned when they are thinking of putting it up. They've been served notice on that. No more nativity scene in the public sphere. In California, we've got a bill that's just come out here. It's called Bill 2017. And this was passed by a vote in the California legislature of 64-1 in favor of declaring 2 days off, paid holidays for 2 Muslim holidays. That's Eid al-Fitr and Eid al-Adha. Sorry if I didn't pronounce that right. So you're seeing on the one side in one state the nativity scene banned. On the other side, you're seeing now public holiday, 2 days public holiday. They're pushing for and asking for at least 1, but pushing for 2 in Australia. They just announced there's Australia, of course, being a big cricket nation, and they have what's called the Big Bash cricket tournament every year, and that'll be coming up. And they've been served notice that the national anthem will not be allowed to be played there. I guess it's offensive to some people to have the national anthem. So this kind of cultural war is not just in the U.S., not just in Canada, but this culturally Marxist theme definitely resonates through media and through what we would call the free world. So before you get too depressed and think there's nothing you can do to that, excuse me, Meta, of course, the giant Meta tech company, has just backed down on, they had been posting and advertising a real breakthrough in terms of the technology. We all know that most of these big firms now, they do have video generating capacity. You can take a photo of yourself or just take a photo from your photo library and give it to the video generation app, and boom, you have video of yourself doing whatever you say. And they've just backed down for something because what they had done, this particular model of their AI, you could go to anybody's Instagram site, take that photo, look at it, just screenshot it, give it to this particular AI function that Meta was putting out, and you can get that person to be doing anything. I'll just let your imagination go wild, but get them doing anything. And there was a real outcry over about 2 days. I mean, thousands of people saying, no, this has gone too far. They see it as an invasion of their Instagram accounts. And then you get so many fake and deep fake videos out there, you never know it's true. And because the outcry was so loud, even before the legalities of it were being discussed, Meta backed down. They've pulled back from that. But folks, it shows where all of this stuff is going. So I'm saying there's a positive and a negative here. The big companies, the big AI companies, they will continue to push the limit. If we speak up and if people are upset about, they will back down from it. Costco is being sued right now for having a product. Those of you who are into protein supplements, I kind of like looking at them myself in terms of working out and that type of thing. But they're being sued because apparently on one of their products, their protein supplements called Orgain, and I'm somewhat familiar with that. I've looked at some of their product there, used it at times. The Orgain protein supplement, especially for people looking at it, started out for enhancing their workouts and things like that. It is a plant-based supplement. And what has come out is there's a large group that is suing them, saying they're not fully talking about the toxic metal ingredients. In case you just heard a noise there on the broadcast, a cat just jumped up here into the studio onto my broadcast area, so that was that noise. But anyway, the plant-based protein, I didn't realize this till I was starting to read on this, and it's big in the news right now, does have certain higher levels of metallic substances. Not to say you're drinking and swallowing metals, but it does have a higher, if it's plant-based, higher levels than in supplements, protein supplements that are meat-based, or even those that are synthetically based. There's certain elements that are in there, and these groups are saying they're not sufficiently advertising that fact. They're not talking about the metal toxicity in some of the plant-based protein supplement, and so they have backed down. Costco's backed down. So again, another case of if people do rise up, if they do speak about it, you can actually have an effect. So don't despair, folks. Your voices still count on these issues. Well, good news for Canadians. The Gordie Howe Bridge now, it's been with the trade discussions with the Trump administration. It is going to open on July 27th. We've talked about the Gordie Howe Bridge. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it there, but when it was in the process of its construction, it was Canada that was footing 100% of the costs, and so it's always been the agreement. The Canadians have thought that they will be able to get that back from the tolls on the bridge. Of course, all these bridges, there's 4 bridges that cross back and forth in the area, that geographic area generally. Huge amount of the traffic, of our commercial traffic, of valuable goods going back and forth. And the Trump administration saying they weren't going to open it, weren't going to allow it to be open. So there is an agreement, and they're going to be able to do that. However, in terms of Canada is not going to be able to collect 100% of the tolls. They'll be allowed to collect 50%. The other 50% will go towards a regional development fund. That's the agreement that's been used and that's been agreed upon with the states. So not getting 100%, but the bridge is going to be open. That is the good news. And of course, for Canadians in Windsor, looking across the river at Detroit, the name, we like the fact that it's after our Canadian hockey hero, Gordie Howe. But of course, the people in Detroit are reminding us that, yes, that's your hero, but he did play for us in Detroit, and he did take us 4 times to the Stanley Cup. So a lot of the good-natured rivalry still going on there, and Canada having to come to a bit of an agreement there, a compromise, not collecting 100% of the tolls, 50% only, but at least it's going to be open and rolling. The importance of, we've talked a lot on this podcast about the fact that Canada could be and should be a world leader in exporting refined petroleum products like liquid natural gas. And a report out of the EU saying, and we've talked about the fact that if our natural gas could be allowed to go across Canada and shipped to Europe, it would break the hold that Putin has on Europe in terms of Europe having to buy his oil and gas products and finance his war against Ukraine. It's a crazy situation. And so we do have a report that's just come out by the EU. In the first 6 months, 136 tankers coming straight from Russia to the EU to supply the European community's energy needs and fund the war against the Ukrainians. So there we have again that anomaly, still continued tragic situation. The EU obviously fighting Putin and at the same time funding him. And Canada, we still have provinces and we still have regulatory regimes. We still have First Nations groups that are blocking the safe transit of our energy products. It's a crazy situation, folks, but we'll see if they can come to some kind of a conclusion on this. Don't know actually how it's going to work out. On the oil markets today, we see because the Strait of Hormuz is under attack again, and President Trump is saying he's hitting hard now again in Iran. So that makes the price of oil, of course, go up. So in fact, it looks like the stock market then, if you look at it broadly, because oil and gas sales are such a significant part of measuring what's going on in the markets, it looks like activity going up there. And it is if you're invested in oil and gas stocks, but slightly downward across the markets. And this is across the board, Canada, the US, we see it in Europe and a little bit in Asia also, where manufacturing then and stocks and industry-based stocks will go up because they are perceiving that with the price of energy is going up, then the price of manufacturing is going up. So that continues to be sort of bouncing up and down. We'll see where that is going to go. Well, fascinating thing in Canada, since reports have just come out in terms of financial reports, since being elected after measuring this last year of Prime Minister Carney's time and term as Prime Minister, in this last year, we have actually seen real GDP. Remember, GDP is gross domestic product. That's the amount of all the goods and services that are created in a country in a year. That's actually has dropped. And that is significant. Consumer spending has dropped. The housing market has gone down. And as a matter of fact, in some areas, it's the worst. They're saying the economically and overall GDP, throw in the housing market, it's the worst since 1963. We've had 2 quarters of back-to-back contraction in the economy, which is normally defined as a recession. We have a situation where British Columbia has struck a deal with the federal government. It's called the Canada-BC Cooperative Prosperity Agreement. And that means that though the pipeline, which the Prime Minister has agreed upon with Premier Smith, will be getting approval, the British Columbia government will be able to extract a toll on that. So all of these things, including the contraction in the economy, and then now here's the interesting part. So Nanos, the big polling company, did a poll of Canadians, 60% of Canadians approving of the how Prime Minister Carney is handling the economy. People say, well, why is that? Listen, I've talked before, we'll talk about it again. The culturally Marxist media always will show favoritism and will support in indirect, if not direct ways, any government or political leader that is culturally Marxist and supports those left-leaning views. Media will find a way of trying to stay positive and not focus on the negative. And if you notice, mainstream media, when it comes to covering Mr. Carney, he has mastered the same thing. Actually, the mayor of New York and others, politicians now starting to realize the whole time you're talking in front of a camera, make sure you are smiling. Smile even if you're saying the most heartrending things to say. Keep smiling. Prime Minister Carney is very good at that. And this helps to add to the sense, just a general sense among the population that actually he's handling the economy really well when all the economic indicators are that the economy is not doing that well. So before you get too depressed, there's some good news here on the story. You've been following this, that they say ticks, yes, those little ticks that get under your skin. In some areas, they say there's a bit of an epidemic. People are trying to say it's climate change. Of course, I don't follow that, but There's some breakthrough technology if you're interested in Nova Scotia, and it's been reported over the last over the last year that is in Atlantic Canada, especially a rise in ticks in the forest, and they get in under your skin. They can have very detrimental effects on you. And what they're promoting is they're saying that, and they're finding in the rural areas and those are on farms, the guinea fowl. This is a bird, kind of an awkward looking bird. You might want to look it up, check it out, and kind of a funny looking cross between a chicken and a turkey is what they look like. But they really, according to what people are saying, really are able to reduce the amount of ticks on the farm and on the rural areas. And they've been doing interviews on this, very effective. I don't know if you can get a guinea fowl out on your property wherever you live, but they say they're especially effective because they eat the ticks right off of the leaves of the plants, of the vegetable plants, and they do it without damaging the leaves. Downside is they say the guinea fowl are kind of dumb. For instance, they have a habit of sleeping in trees even when the weather is bad, and that makes them a prime target for predators. And but the good news just keeps coming here, folks. If they can be trained. If every night for 3 weeks you gather up all your guinea fowl and put them in the chicken shed, they will start to actually enjoy and want to be in shelter rather than out there exposed to the elements and exposed to predators. So there you go. There's you want to battle ticks. There's the way you can find it. Well, Gen Z, in terms of companies that want to market their products, because Gen Z tend to be so focused on anything personalized, right? You make it personal, get it out there on TikTok, get it out there on Instagram, and retailers will either follow it or promote it. And so a bit of a rage, I'm not saying it's the overwhelming rage, but a real uptick in number of on coverage is deodorant, what kind of deodorant you're using. And so it's not just, how they're marketing, the cosmetic companies are able to market their cosmetics, because especially with young women, they just show them constantly close up on the screens doing the cosmetic. And they're finding that now that different ones are pointing to, and it doesn't look like an ad, just looks like young people, Gen Z out there lathering up their arms with deodorant. And just goes to show that you want to personalize something, then get it to an influencer, and it doesn't look like an ad, and you can get people buying your underarm product or whatever it is you particularly want to sell. The other thing that's being noted in some of those who observe what's happening in the Gen Z world is an increasing niche. They're calling it a niche in terms of book reading. Book reading is actually becoming a bit of a thing. Again, it's Gen Z talking about the books they're reading. Now, long books, not so much, but shorter books. It seems like there's a possibility that people do want a little bit more informed content, and they are willing to spend more time on books. We'll see if that particular trend continues. On the sports news, and this is for people that start to Gen Z can reflect on this. If you're young, you'll know this, but for those of you who are sort of in my group, we see in the UFC, Conor McGregor was a huge name in UFC, in this mixed martial arts fighting. He's been out of it for 5 years and got a lot of attention over the last few months, talking about he's going to make his big comeback, and a phenomenal fighter. And he did make the comeback over the weekend, UFC 329 it was called. And he was out in a hurry in his first match because he tried to do something he used to be able to do when he was younger. And it's called a roundabout kick. You leap up in the air, you do a 360 in the air, and then your goal is to catch the other guy in the jaw with your heel. He landed wrongly, tore the ACL pretty well right out of his leg, couldn't get up again, lost the fight. And all the commentators say, Connor, when you hit a certain age, there's stuff you just can't do anymore, like stay athletic, keep performing, but you've got to use a bit of common sense. I find that myself out playing some football or some soccer, as we say, with a couple of my grandsons, and as you age, your brain says one thing. I would my brain would say to my feet, okay, you're running towards them, you got the ball, now you just deke here, flick it off that side of the foot over to the other side, and my feet say, no, that ain't happening. So folks, take a little care there. If you're, Connor McDavid's only in his 40s, but be careful about what you're doing. Well, you want to know about the coffee world, what kind of coffee you should be buying? The 250 chefs worldwide, and they make up what's called the International Coffee Taste Institute. And they are polled in terms of types of coffee they think are the best. It goes into a big contest. So topping the list, one of the top of the list is the Lavazza, if I'm pronouncing that right for you coffee drinkers, Lavazza or ZZA, Lavazza, Tales of Italy coffee. Top the list in terms of for taste, aroma, and overall texture. Also, Canal Grande, and this one is actually found in Walmart. Walmart buys this from Great Britain, scoring very high. Those types of coffees that get 3 stars, which is among the highest you can get in terms of coffee. 5 of the coffees that got the 3-star rating were from Italy. 5 of them from Italy. Got the 3-star rating. Spain got a Spanish coffee, got the 3-star rating, and then 1-star ratings going to South Korea and Japan. So interesting. It's not all about Colombia, folks. Not all about Colombia. Well, in interesting news coming out of Beijing. Remember, I talked last week about the fact that the pastor who was released, who'd been put in jail in China, and because of President Trump's intervention, he got out. That was a very good news story, but it's also led to more exposure and reporting that Beijing continues to, under President Xi Jinping, continues to increase its persecution on churches, especially those churches which are called underground. Doesn't mean they're necessarily hiding, but they do not go to the government to seek approval on what they can teach and what they can preach. And those churches are increasingly, people get disappeared, as they say it. People will lose the ability to find work if they're branded among these churches. And at the same time, it's not just a Christian community that Beijing and Chinese government is going after, but they're really interfering aggressively. They want to take over the selection process for the selection of the next Dalai Lama. And there's a protracted process. Some of you are aware of it. When they select a Dalai Lama, it's strictly up to them. There's all kinds of, as they say, spiritual signs they look for. And the government there wanting to make sure it's their appointee. So, it's a time where people can unite across, even across religious bounds. The government should not be interfering in the religious life of their people. And we see, and I was recently attending a function where members of the Jewish community were standing up very strong for some of the restrictions in Canada against the Christian community. It's that type of linking of arms which can convince governments they need to back off. And as I've talked before about the Dalai Lama, and I've spent time with him in the past, a few years ago, with their government in exile in northern India, working on a project there relative to strategy on what China is doing with Tibet. So, folks, as we've just shown and talked about earlier, enough people standing up and speaking out against big companies like Meta for what they're doing in terms of the internet, enough people standing up and speaking out and linking arms, even across a spiritual divide. Hopefully something can be done, and China will take note and will start backing off, easing off their attacks on Christians and Buddhist folks. Thanks for tuning in. Catch you tomorrow.